You are now watching the Vision channel, where Habakkuk 2 and 2 says, write the vision and make it plain, so they that see it can take it and run with it. This is the channel where faith and vision collide to bring forth a manifestation. You're watching the Vision channel. I would like to welcome you to our broadcast today on the Vision channel on Covenant Keepers. Listen, tonight, I truly want you to listen tonight. We're probably going to go through several different things tonight, and some stuff we're going to try to stay on the surface, and some stuff you're going to have to go with us. Because we're going to try to get to the root of why issues arise, why problems and circumstances come, or why some stuff you don't know that when you get married, some stuff come in. You know, like they say sometimes you have to leave your baggage before you come into marriage, and some stuff come already packed when you come into the relationship, and there are some things that you don't know that are there until you get into the relationship. There are some things that some people go through them personally while before they get married. They don't know what they deal with. They don't know circumstances that they come with them. They don't know until they get into marriage, and then everything is unfolded. Everything is expressed. You know, we look at our day and our time. Marriage has truly been fought. It has been fought in a great way. And most people don't know why. What society has done in our generation is they are trying to make what's normal abnormal and make what's abnormal normal. I'll say that again. In our day, in our time, what society has done is trying to make what's normal, which is marriage, to make it abnormal, which means it's not a thing of this hour. It's not a thing of this desire to see a man and a woman married. Now it is becoming a thing of being abnormal. And the thing that's abnormal, which means you have the same-sex marriage, they're making that abnormal. What's abnormal, now they're making that normal in this generation, in this time. So it's a lot of things that we must discuss today, you know, because marriage has always been under attack. This is just not a generation or an era that marriage is under attack. The first marriage was under attack. The very first marriage was under attack. When you go back to Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, we see how God candidly put Adam and Eve together, or man and woman together, for a specific purpose. He said, let them have dominion, and that was good because God made man in his image, and in the image of God, the Bible said he made them, both male and female. So they both took on the responsibility, they both took on the image and likeness because they both had a purpose to function when it came down to marriage. Now, I'm getting ready to say something that's probably going to be strong, so I want you to get ready to hear what I'm getting ready to say, that when it comes to marriage, and I'm going to show you the time that we're in. There's a time that we're in, and I'm going to talk about the Antichrist. You know what the word anti means? Anti means against. So anything that has anything to do with Christ, the Antichrist is always in it, or the Antichrist will always reveal himself by him being anti. Now, you have to remember this, that the Antichrist needs a body. In order for something to become concrete in civilization, he needs a physical body to have a physical expression, to make legislations, to make laws. So he needs that. So let me tell you what this revelation that I received when it comes to the Antichrist. So let me tell you why this agenda is being pushed at the capacity that it is. And this is just food for thought. I want you tonight to have some food for thought based on what I'm getting ready to say. In the book of Daniel chapter, and just stay with me, we're talking about tonight that is your spouse an intercessor, because you have to have an intercessor in this season. Your spouse must be an intercessor. So I'm going to give you this before. This is why it is so necessary for your spouse to become an intercessor. And I told you they're trying to make what's normal abnormal and make what's abnormal normal. Let me give you one of the characteristics of the Antichrist in the last days. I want you to see this because this is food for thought, okay? In Daniel chapter 11, I'm going to read verses 35 through 37, and I'm just trying to get to my point. It said, and some of them, we're talking about the end times, which you'll hear, and some of them of understanding shall fall. Hear this. To try them and to purge them and to make them white, even to the time of the end. Because it is yet for a time appointed. Verse 36, and the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, which is God, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. I'm trying to get to verse 37. Neither shall he, which means the Antichrist, regard the God of his fathers, watch this, nor desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. Now, I said that because I'm going to reintroduce this because I want you to see the time that we're in, why marriage is being attacked the way that it is, and why it's such an urgency and emergency for laws and legislation to be passed, because we're in the end times and marriage is under attack. It stated, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. Watch this, nor the desire of women. Notice it said he. And then he said he shall not desire women. And if you look in today's time and today's hour, and when you look at the agendas and the legislations that are being passed, we see that we are in the end times, because before time, marriage was attacked. Now time has started. Now marriage is also being attacked at a greater capacity to smite God, the God of all gods. He shall dishonor the God that is above all gods, but he shall try to make himself as a God, but he shall not desire women. Food for thought. This is why marriages are being attacked. Now, I'm going to get into the life of an intercessor. Are you an intercessor for your spouse? Now, I'm going to go through many scriptures probably today. We're going to be short tonight, but I truly want us to understand why you must be an intercessor. Why? One of the most significant things scripturally is intercession. You know, I know that when we get into relationships, we normally marry somebody based on how much we love them. And sometimes that love becomes humanistic. The love is based on feelings. It's based on emotions. It's based on how some people respond or what they do that shows that individual how much they love the person. So we get married based on love, based on resources, based on communication, and all of these are great platforms in order to establish marriage, establish a relationship. They are great. Communication, finances, communication, love. All of these are great, but oftentimes within the midst of that relationship, sometimes we miss one of the key ingredients. And me being a baker, it's great to be able to have the flour, have the sugar, have the milk, have the butter, have the rising powder. But I've never seen cakes made without eggs. Eggs is the secret ingredient that hold the cake together, because you're going to need those yolks in order to keep that cake from falling apart. And I think one of the secret ingredients that we sometimes miss, that we do not incorporate in relationships in our marriage, is intercession. It's prayer. And we do everything else with the exception of not praying. Praying is different, because I can pray, okay, I pray that my wife, I pray that she have a good day today at work. I pray that no incidents happen, no accidents happen, and we pray these prayers, and that's great prayers. And when I'm talking about being an intercessor, that means you're a watchman on the wall. That means you stand at the gate. And oftentimes, how the enemy, Jesus Christ, the Bible said, first, in order to come into a strong man's house, you first must bind the strong man. The strong man is the one that stands at the gate of their relationship. And if that person is bound, then the stronger man comes in and takes the entire house, takes the spouse, takes the children, take the finances. But the strong man first must be bound in order for Satan to come in and take the house. And oftentimes, either or, vice versa, whether the woman is in position or the man is in position, oftentimes we just only specify our relationship based on our humanistic feelings, which is love. But what happens when you've done everything in love, but no result or nothing has changed? You've done everything physically. You've given money, you've given time, you've given yourself, you've given communication. You've given everything that you know to do. But why, if you've done everything out of love, resistance is still there? And I think, and the cute prayers sometimes don't work. I said this earlier, one of the reasons why you have to be an intercessor, and that's the secret ingredient that's left out in some relationships and some marriages, because we don't know that coming into marriage is going to cause a war. We don't know the battles that we're going to face. And this is a never-ending battle. So sometimes in the midst of these battles, we are trying to figure it out naturally when it's something that took place spiritually, because of how significant the relationship is. And I said this, and I talked about how people normally bring baggage in. And I'm going to just use a reference that's in the book of Romans, and I'm going to use it as a reference so that people can understand my point. The Bible says when Adam sinned, it said the second that he sinned, it said that now death came in because Adam had sinned. Now death passed upon all men. And I'm using this as a reference so people can get an understanding that you can open the door. Somebody in your family can open the door. Your great-grandfather, your great-grandmother, somebody that's been in the bloodline that has opened a door when it came to relationship, when it came to marriages. So you can look throughout somebody's entire bloodline and you can see that every person in that family, there's a pattern. People got divorced. Nobody stayed married because that was something that was open. The strong man lost the battle. Satan came in and he took that entire house. House means generation. We understand that means in Greek. So when Adam came in, not only did death come in, but divorce, division, it came in. And those are the doors that sometimes that are open in an individual's life, that when they get married, they have no idea that when they get married, they don't know the battles that everybody else lost in that person's bloodline. So what happens is when you get married, there are deities and powers that took over that house that are raised the second that that individual get married, because they were assigned to destroy that marriage. And oftentimes, we don't know what that person has come into the relationship with based on what they were defeated or what fought their bloodline. And this is why God is trying to raise up intercessors. It's great for prayers of protection, but sometimes you have to have prayers of warfare. There are prayers that certain things must be broken. There are certain battles that you must fight when it comes to your spouse. And being an intercessor is not a seasonal thing, it's a lifetime thing. Because there are doors that we open, doors, emotional doors. There are soul ties. There are so many things that transpire and take place in an individual life. Lord have mercy. And sometimes God will give you a person that is the unedited version of who he called that person to be. And I think the unedited version is the version that God will use. And I'm saying this, and I'm going to let you say something real quick. We struggle with the battles that people in bloodline struggled with. And this is why you have to go into every marriage with discernment and with a relationship with God, learning how to pray through seasons. We don't know how to pray through seasons because in every marriage there are seasons, just as there are 4 seasons. And oftentimes the people that you are praying for, let me say this, because I'm trying to get to my point. I'm trying to get to this. Because I know some people are going to get offended. Sometimes the people you can pray for would be the person that you're fighting for would be the person that fights you. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you think it's so difficult for people to stay married when they were sure about when they got married?
That's an easy question to answer. It's easy because the relationship was in a romance phase in the beginning. So the beginning, it's like, just say if they was out of Christ, there's an attraction, she's pretty, she got long hair, she has a nice shape, he's, small in the waist and thick in the chest, and he has, pretty eyes and he got good hair. The story of how people visually look at someone. So the romance or the romantic phase is present. But then as life and as you and your spouse develops, then, her hips may get a little wider. Mm-hmm. He may lose a little hair. He may got a donut around his waist. She done had 2 babies, so now everything is kind of out of place. She cut her hair, whatever it is that's changed. Mm-hmm. So now you in the life phase of the relationship, and that person is not appealing to you anymore. So these are people who don't know Christ. That's how I'm starting off with that at the beginning of the marriage. However, if you are in Christ before you were married, the attraction may still be a physical attraction. However, they understand the assignment. And in the assignment is, I'm going to deal with, some issues that this person may bring into the relationship so they grow together. But what makes it difficult when you are saved and you have this is that you don't want to hurt the person, nor do you don't want to let God down. So the battle is, how do I deal with this? Do I argue all the time, or do I pray? Do I get emotional, or do I weep in worship? So the tears may not be tears of I'm hurting. The tears need to be tears that I am being fulfilled by my Father. And sometimes that's difficult because you see the natural. Mm-hmm. And in seeing the natural, it's like your mind, God is trying to turn your head this way, but you keep looking this way because you see everything in the natural, and it's a little hard to turn your head to what God has for us. It's a little hard to look to the hills from where your help come from. You don't see God at the top of that mountain. You like, dude, look here. You see what's going right here in the valley?
Mm-hmm.
The valley is a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
The valley is where I'm getting beat up and I'm hurting. My heart is broken. My mind is confused. I'm having issues. The devil trying to put me in a position where just walk away. Leave your children and your spouse and just walk away. Or take the gun and put it to your head.
Mm-hmm.
Or run that car over the
Cliff.
what is it called? What a ditch is. Just run it over and you know, end it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, drop the kids off at school and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That's how your mind goes, like, I'm not going back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing this. I don't want to have this relationship anymore. I'm done. However, God is still trying to make you look up. And if you look up, you won't see the valley. You will see nothing but his glory.
Mm.
And it's hard to see his glory. It's hard because you be like this. No, Lord, I can't see it because the only thing I see is this valley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to grasp the hills when you're in the valley. It's like, you know, if you ever went mountain climbing, went hill climbing, like in the hill country, you know, just go wander in the woods. I went there for a camp one time, and in going up the hill, there's some trouble you have. They tell you don't wear shorts, you know, you don't try to be cute and wear shorts, wear your long pants and, you know, what's the cargo pants, because you may fall.
Mm-hmm.
I was young. I thought I was trying to be cute. You know, I'm with the little camper kids and we going to be cute. I hit that ground. I said, oh, Lord, I'm done. I ain't want to climb the hill no more because I hit a rock. And so you hit a rock, you scuff your knee, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how in the relationship when you're going through something, it's hard to climb that mountain because you got on shorts and you getting scuffed, you getting beat up, you're falling down. Or if you go up that hill and you got the wrong shoes on, your shoes is the way that you should your traction that you have. But spiritually, your shoes is where your path is, where you need to go so you can. But if you walk in a hill and you walk in a hill in high heels, if you're a woman, or you walking with your cowboy boots on, you ain't gonna get up. You ain't getting up that mountain like that hill where you're supposed to. So sometimes it feels like you're fighting a losing battle because you're always focused on the valley. Mm-hmm. And it is our duty and our purpose is to look to the hills and climb the hills so you can go where God is and he can show you that the valley, if you stand on the top of a mountain and you look down, like, you know, by the time we got to the top of the hill and you look down, you couldn't see all the commotion that was down. You saw nothing but glory. How God built stuff, how God made trees to be this tall and that tall, how he had rivers flowing through, you know, the valley where you could see it looked like crystal clear water. But when you down in the valley, it's mud and dirt, look like swamps. Mm-hmm. But when you're on the hill, there's a different perspective. And that's where God wants us to get to, that different perspective. Yes, it may be hard in the valley. Yes, you're going through. Yes, you're hitting your head. You're falling. You're feeling all, you know, left alone and lonely. But if you come to the hill where I am, let me restore you. Let me help you and let me show you a different perspective when you're up here with me.
You know, I think that's great because oftentimes in the valley is where droughts are. In the valley, that's where decisions of death come. Death is no more than separation. So when you start talking about divorce to separation, that means it's just death. Mm-hmm. But if you can glance your eyes before you climb your hill, you'll find comfort. Mm. If you can glance your eyes upon him, if you can glance your eyes upon the hill, then comfort can come while you're in the valley. The valley is where decisions are made. Mm-hmm. The Bible said, although I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. So it tells you that three things are taking place while you're in the valley. Although I walk through. So that means it was never a permanent place. It was a place that we had to walk through in the valley. And sometimes as you're walking, which means you're taking steps. And I think sometimes what takes place in our marriage is that when it comes to us, the reason why God assigned us to certain people, assigned us to certain marriages, assigned us to certain bloodlines, he assigned us because he knew that we had the potential and the power to be able to deal with whatever circumstance that would arise, because he knew that we had the power to become an intercessor. And in saying that, God normally assigns the ones who are sons and daughters to go into battle. When it came to Jesus, it said that the Spirit of God led him into the wilderness to fight. So sometimes that valley, it can become a wilderness. But it's in the wilderness sometimes that God will have you to fight battles that other people have lost. So just when you come into certain marriages, certain relationships, and he'll have you to do that through intercession. He'll have you to do that through the word. Although I walk through, and sometimes God orders your steps to go into the valley. Mm-hmm. He'll order your steps to go into the valley. And while you're in the valley, there's something that God will have you to speak. Now, I want you to get here what I'm getting ready to say. It's in the valley where God orders steps, but it's in the valley where God will have you to speak. In Ezekiel, the Bible said that God placed him in the valley full of dry bones. Mm-hmm. And in the valley, he taught him how to speak while he was in the valley, because things were being broken. It was an army, but the army themselves were being broken. And God told him, now prophesy. I prophesied as I was commanded. So there are steps that are taking place, and on the steps there, now God has given him the ability to speak. There's authority, there's power that's there in order to rebuild, to restructure, to renew. And this is what God teaches you while you're in the valley. He orders steps. The steps of a good man, they are ordered. And sometimes the valley can be uncomfortable, but obedience is the first step. It's obeying God. While you're seeing him on the hill, he's placed you in the valley. Mm-hmm. Because it said that even though you're in the valley, it said that although I walk through, it was never a permanent place. Mm-hmm.
Transition.
That's it. Although I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So death is present. The shadow of it. The shadow of death, he said, I will fear no evil. So we know death is here and evil is there. And it makes the statement, it said, thy rod and thy staff, it comforts me. One of the most significant things that we will ever find in our valley, when we're in the valley of marriages, when the valley of decision, because that's the place of decision, because death is there. Death is separation. It said, thy rod and thy staff, it comforts me. Now, please hear this. Because God used a rod and a staff, because he used that because he's the shepherd. Mm-hmm. So in the midst of your valley, the shepherd is there. So even if you just keep walking, this is the reason why death can't get to you. This is the reason why evil don't get to you, because his rod and staff is comforting you while you're in the valley.
Absolutely.
This is why. But he makes us in the places of intercessors while we're in the valley. Mm-hmm. Because there are some families that are in the valley, some husbands are in the valley, some wives are in the valley, and the valley is the place of decision. Mm-hmm. And God doesn't say just climb the mountain as he would tell Moses, but he said, I look upon the hills from my help, from which cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. And that's in Psalms 121. And see, that's the blessing for me. That when you're in the valley, God tells you, he said that the sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. It said that he that keepeth Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. It said God will not suffer your foot to be moved. So it's in the valley where decisions are being made. But it's in the valley where God gives you comfort, he gives you peace. But if he tells you that my rod and thy staff, it comforts me. Do you know what that means? He will send the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is known as a comforter. Mm-hmm. He will comfort you in the valley. But in the midst of you going through the valley, who brought the valley? Because some people carry a valley spirit. Mm-hmm. Some people, they come into the marriage, and when the marriage starts, all of a sudden the marriage becomes a valley. Mm-hmm. But God had prepared you. Can I say something to some people today? And I'm trying to express this that it looks like your life is going down. When you get with certain people, and it's not that, it's just the battle that now starts to engage. People start to get engaged in battle and fights ending up taking place. And I'm saying this because I want people to get prepared. But God prepared the person. You should have been prepared before you ever got into that fight, before you ever got into that battle. Because God would never send Moses to bring the children of Israel out if he didn't desire to bring them back in the desert. Moses survived the desert. So some people, before they ever get married, God gave them a testimony of what they survived. He brought them out of certain things. He brought them into certain things. So when it comes to you coming into a relationship, God looks at your life to see that now I can choose you, now that I can use you to bring somebody else out of their belly. Now you can intercede on their behalf because you survived it. Now you have a testimony. And you overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony, because when you start talking about him, you're talking about Satan, because he despises what's normal that they're trying to make abnormal. He despises marriage, so he attacks marriage because of the unity. So this is why you must be the watchman on the wall. Now I'm going to go to a couple of scriptures tonight, and I want you to understand that the people who left you, or the people that hurt you, then they left you, they only saw the unedited version of you. And God trusted, and this is what I'm saying. When you get married, God will trust you with that person. He'll trust you with his image and his likeness. And I think that's the trouble that people have, because they don't see the image and likeness. They see the image and likeness as something else. But God will use you as him in his stead to be the intercessor. When the Bible said that Jesus sit at the right hand of the Father, constantly making intercession for us. So when you have a relationship with God, you take on that image, you take on that likeness, you take on the responsibility as an intercessor for your spouse until God sees what he desires to see. So you should be praying and staying until Jesus said, I am he which is, which was, and which is to come, which means I'm past, I'm present, and I'm future. And here's the thing, when God can see your dedication and your heart and how responsible you are as an intercessor, you get the opportunity to see, because you know about the past, you're going through in the present, but then he have you to look for something futuristically. I am he which is, which was, and which is to come. Past, present, and future. So God allows you to defeat things and doors that are open in that individual life from their past, while you're going through things in your present, that you have the stamina and the strength to be able to see what's getting ready to take futuristically. And sometimes we faint through the process because the war is great. And the intercessors come off of the wall, and now the enemy comes into the marriage, and the gate is open. Failure normally takes place in fainting. And we faint. This is why the Bible says, if your strength fail in the day of battle, then your strength is small. But there is a system that heaven has established for us. And I think it's in the book of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29. It says that he give power to the faint, and them that have no might, he increase strength. So there's the increasing of strength, and he gives power to the faint. And when God says he gives power, he gives you power over all the power of the enemy to be an intercessor. But oftentimes in battles, we attack the person and not the spirit that the bloodline, the spirits of the bloodline are using in that individual or to that person. So there's battles that are engaged just because the bloodline, those spirits from that bloodline, don't desire for that person to be free. They don't desire liberation. When the Bible says, whom the Son has set free is free indeed. And oftentimes God will use us to assist him to set other people free through intercession, that God will show you this is the problem. And then you start seeing patterns of the mothers patterns in the fathers, patterns of the aunties, patterns in the cousin, so you can see generational effects that will take place when it comes to relationships and come to marriage. And when you see it, you can't just say you see something and not do something about it. A lot of times we say something and we think that we're powerless when it comes to intercession. God looks for us to pray. I've called you to pray against this spirit. Pray against this lazy spirit. Pray against this procrastinating spirit. Pray against this argumentative spirit. I'm calling you to pray against this spirit of confusion, this spirit of doubt. I'm causing you to pray. And oftentimes we see the person's pattern of behavior and we don't know that that person is being fought and that person has lost the battle. But God is calling you to step up in the battle and engage in war. To engage in war. And we fight the person thinking that we can change the person, and we disgruntle the person and the spirit still exists. And this is one of the reasons why God has called us to be intercessors for what he has called us to do. Now, I'm going to go through some scriptures real quick. Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25. And I just want to show you something that when it came down to Isaac and Rebekah. Genesis chapter 25. I think it's in verse 21, I think it is. Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25. That doggone phone pop-ups. Genesis chapter 25. Now, this is, I'm going to start in verse 19. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Pandarim, the sister of Laban, the Syrian. Now, Rebekah struggled to have children for 21 years. 21. Not understanding the battle that she was getting ready to fight or face. Just by being married into the bloodline of Isaac. People have no idea, and I know people want the pretty side of when it comes to marriages. And sometimes we forget the spiritual side because we don't understand the spiritual dynamics and the fight that's going to take place spiritually. When you talk about merging a family, merging a bloodline, when you start talking about merging as one, everything in that family that held families bound, that had families to struggle in poverty, that caused craziness and all type of stuff, having children out wedlock, all this stuff, and you think for some reason that you're going to get married and everything is going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's only going to increase. Now they get an opportunity to wage war because God looks at the person that stands in the gate of that relationship to be the intercessor, to be able to deal with anything that will come in that house, anything that will come in that bloodline. See, and I'm trying not to go too far. Why do you think God told Adam before he got married that I'm giving you this power to multiply, to replenish, to subdue, but I'm giving you dominion over everything in the earth? Why would God give him that kind of power? Because he knew that the earth at some point was void. So God gives us the power, the ability, and the authority, and he gives us dominion in marriage and in relationships to deal with anything that would make that marriage void, to multiply that marriage, to replenish, because he was the first gatekeeper. He was the gatekeeper. So when judgment came, God came straight to the gatekeeper first. He didn't come to Eve. Adam, where are you? He came to the gatekeeper. How could this thing take place? How did this get in the gate? And God looks at us to be the gatekeepers. So in Isaac's life, Rebekah was struggling for 21 years to have one child, and she was a virgin. Isaac was a virgin. So there was no relationships where there were soul ties, but there were generational curses that came down. There were doors that were open in both of their bloodlines so that children would produce. Children couldn't produce. But the Bible said that Isaac had to be the intercessor for his wife in order for that child to come to pass, in order for that to be fulfilled, in order for her desires to come into fruition. He had to be the first intercessor. Verse 21 said, and Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, no children. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Now, she didn't conceive just by them being intimate and being one. She conceived after intercession. So something had to be removed from her womb in order for that seed to conceive. There was no infidelity. There was nothing that would stop that seed from coming. But there was battles that Isaac had to be the intercessor for his wife. And when he entreated, the Bible said, the Lord, that child was birthed. And whatever caused barrenness, whatever caused the spirit of barrenness in her life, the spirit of barrenness had to be removed because God had an intercessor for the bloodline so that he can send a child. Now, I know we know God can do anything. I know we do. But I think sometimes we want God to do it all without any participation. We want God to do it all without anticipation, without any participation. If that's the case, why did God, an angel, Gabriel, had to come to Zacharias for his wife Elizabeth? If he could do it on his own, God didn't need him. He just said, okay, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use your womb. I'm going to use what you got, and your wife is going to have a child, period. But the spirit of barrenness was there, and God had to use Zacharias, who was an intercessor. He's in the church, and you have to be careful as an intercessor. Please hear me. You have to be careful as an intercessor because you can't doubt God when God gives you instructions. He's doubting God that he can have children, and he's an intercessor. An intercessor. He's covering children. He's covering the nation, but he don't believe God for his own house. As an intercessor, he is the intercessor. And the reason his wife is not having children because he don't believe. The intercessor who don't believe. And this is where you got to be careful. His wife was barren, and the angel said, I am Gabriel, the one that stands in the presence of God. I'm only a messenger. I have a message that your wife would have children. And listen, you cannot debate or doubt when it comes to God or you being the intercessor of your house. You being the intercessor for your spouse. Now listen, Elizabeth would have missed her season because of his doubt, and he's the intercessor. Look at what he was allowing to stay to come in. He was allowing for the spirit of barrenness to come in. This is why you got to be careful. He said, how can this be seeing I'm old and my wife is well stricken? Do you think that God care about how old your wife's body is? He doesn't care. And let me tell you this. In other words, he was saying that her body was dead, that she was beyond the years of being able to produce. And some of you are saying the exact same thing. When it comes to your marriage, you think it's beyond the years of it producing. You think it's beyond time. And you don't understand God is trying to say that this is the time that you think is not going to produce. This time is going to produce because all I need is an intercessor. All I need is somebody to stand in the gap. All I need is somebody to make up the hedge. And this is what God is saying about every marriage, that you have to be the intercessor. You have to be the second Isaac entreated of the Lord for his wife. Her womb was open.
Absolutely.
Watch, this was not nothing spiritual. Please hear this. Not natural. Let me say this. It was not nothing natural because he was doing the natural thing. He didn't do the spiritual thing. The spiritual thing destroyed or annihilated the thing that was prohibiting her from producing. It was removed the second he entreated, the second he interceded for the Lord. And let me say this to everybody, because for some reason, people think that God has given you the finished product of the person that you married to. No, he didn't. He did not give you the finished product. No. He gave you something to pray for.
Absolutely.
He gave you something to pray for. He gave you something to fight for. Yes, and y'all can have a great relationship, but doors will still be closed. Why? Because it's not good enough to have the house. It ain't good enough. See, all of these are battles that you're going to come into. In every battle you fighting, you wage war. Because the enemy will not give you anything when it comes to God. I'm telling you, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to fight whatever door in your marriage that look like it's closed. Then God has given you the power, the authority, and the ability to intercede and wage war on its behalf. Not understanding. You're going to have to engage in battle, engage in war. And we come into marriage haphazardly, singing, la, 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 not knowing that the la, la, la's are going to change. Something is going to transpire and happen. And it's great to be able to quote the word. You can quote the word on a certain situation, but even after quoting the word, you're still going to have to engage in war. There are prayers of thanksgiving where you can thank God. Yes, Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for my wife. I thank you for my children. I thank you for my house. That's great to be able to have prayers of thanksgiving. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Yes, there's moments where you can praise God in the situation, but at some point, after the praises of thanksgiving, after the thanksgiving prayer, after the praises, sometimes you have to wage war. And until you learn to wage war, you're going to always whine in the situation, not knowing that you are the winner. You are the winner. This is why God put some people in marriage. You think that he didn't know that Isaac and Rebekah were meant for one another? That Isaac himself was going to have to intercede? And so let me tell you this, God will never give you the full version, give a person the full version of you. No, he won't. I'll give you a prime example. When you look at Jacob and Leah, watch this. Jacob was upset because he had Leah, but imagine how Leah felt because she had Jacob. I'm going to say that again. Most people would get upset because he had the tender-eyed woman. Listen, her eye was tender, but her heart was right. See, most people keep looking at the appearance, but what about the heart? Her heart was right. It never said once that Leah became disgruntled and attacked Jacob. But Jacob was the unedited version of who God was going to call him to be. But Leah had the ability to stay and innocent. You know that Leah prayed because every time she had a child, she said, the Lord has heard me. You know that she had a relationship, so she had to be the one to intercede. Even though he loved Rachel, it was only physicality. It wasn't spiritual. And it said, yeah, he worked for Leah. He worked for her. He did all of that. He did, and the same person.
He worked for Rachel.
Yeah, he worked for Rachel. He didn't work for Leah. Yeah, he ran away from Leah. But the Bible said because Leah was the intercessor. Leah was the intercessor because she talked. And then she said, okay, now I'm going to praise the Lord. After she had her fourth child, all the child she named after her afflictions, but that kept her talking to God. So it tells you that she was an intercessor. It tells you that she had learned to intercede when it came to her relationship, and she wasn't bitter about things when they wasn't better because she knew eventually they would become better. See, Jacob chose somebody that was like him. Okay. And oftentimes when we get married, if God don't tell you who to marry, or he doesn't give you an inkling or a clue, an idea, we marry people that are like us. Now, this is the problem. Rachel was like Jacob. Watch, the version that was not converted. So Jacob married Rachel, and Rachel wasn't converted. Okay, Jacob stole, his brother's birthright.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel stole her father's idols.
Mm-hmm.
And she hid him and told him that she was on her ministration so her father wouldn't check. So she was just as wicked as Jacob. Mm-hmm. So Jacob chose her because they were kindred spirits. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't have a prayer for her. Watch this. He didn't pray. The Bible said that Rachel was so weary because the Bible said that because Leah had the relationship, when God saw that she wasn't loved, but she was still giving it. Mm-hmm. She was still giving it naturally, and she was still giving it spiritually. Mm-hmm. She was still giving love because she was the intercessor. And the Bible said God opened up her womb when he saw that she was hated. So even when you're being hated, you still have to be the intercessor. So even if, watch this, if the person's heart ain't right, your heart got to be right. This is when the Bible started talking about it said if your enemies be hungry, feed them. So sometimes when you feel like you're sleeping with the enemy, God is still saying, pray for them that despitefully use you. You're still the intercessor. Glory. Even though their heart is not right, but your prayer got to be right. Your relationship got to be right with God, because you have to bring that person out until God changes the heart, because God sees those that are innocent. And watch what the Bible said. That what a man sows, that shall he also reap. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, God is not mocked. You're sowing prayer. You're sowing intercession. And because what you are sowing, God guarantees to give you a harvest, because he said, I'm the Lord of the harvest. So, and this is what happens in marriages, that you get weary and well-doing. See, and this is what I've learned, that because some people don't have the strength or the stamina to continue to pray for the unedited version. Rachel never knew that Jacob would become Israel. She never knew it was hidden in him. Watch this. But in the conversion part, Rachel dies, but Leah lives. Leah had the stamina to be able to survive Jacob so she can get to Israel.
I just wanted to add that Rachel had to die because Rachel could not handle who Jacob was going to become, because her mindset was still the trickster mindset. She still had those same ways of her old. So God had to relieve her of her duties. So Leah can handle what Israel was going to be, but Rachel had to go away, basically. So it was like the way God was looking at it is like, she can't handle what he's going to be. So I'm going to remove her from the situation, because Leah is the intercessor. She knows how to pray to make sure and maintain who Israel, what Jacob would become, which is Israel.
You know, and that's and I want y'all to see this, please. Rachel dies having her second child when Leah had it with ease. She was popping out children like popcorn. Why? Because she was an intercessor. So when God looks at an individual, he doesn't just throw you or connect you with a person. He connects you with a purpose. A person that has a purpose. There's a purpose for you being in that relationship. And sometimes God will see how strong that you will be if I give you an unedited version. I'm seeing if I can trust you with the real her, with the real him. I'm seeing if I can trust you. And sometimes if I cannot trust you, most people leave in the transition before the transformation. There's transformation that will take place, but it's in the transition that you reveal to God that he can't trust you with the transform part. So when people come back, they come back to the transform you. Now, since you've been transformed, they didn't understand why you was in transition. And they would say, you know, and I made this look funny today, because I look at the movie when it came to Tina Turner with Ike. Ike mistreated her. He abused her. And most people, that when it comes to that, it wasn't for Tina Turner made him successful. It wasn't that Tina Turner made him successful. He thought he made her successful. It was Tina Turner that did the singer. All he did was just get high and play the guitar and look around. So watch this. After her success, her transformation, he comes back to her after a show while she's getting ready to get in the car. He's a stalker now because he see her transfer. And then he comes back to say, now you got to come on back now, Anime. I told you I left that narcotic alone. You got to come back.
Narcotic.
I told you I left that narcotic alone. So and these are people that God was trusting with. He trusted you with before you were in the transition, before your transformation. He was trusting you, which was and which is, but not which is to come. If you got past the which is the present, then he could trust you fully with which is to come. So, and what took place with them, that God couldn't trust him with the which is, he had the which is, but which was to come. Once the transformation came, and this is why people want to come back. They want to come back because they see you transform. So, and here's the thing, because they never had the stamina to pray, to wait for change to come. That God was going to answer, that something was going to metamorphosize, something was going to transfer, that something was getting ready to happen where the caterpillar was getting ready to become the butterfly. But the butterfly was always hidden in the caterpillar. You just didn't see it because you didn't pray.
That reminds me of the statement we used to say back in the day, something, but now I'm hot, you all on me.
Oh, yeah.
When I was something, you didn't want me, and
Yeah.
when I'm
Now
hot, you all on me. Yeah, that reminds me of that. That's all.
So this is the issue and the problem that we have when it comes to marriage. So people divorce us in the valley, not knowing that the shepherd is there. Not knowing that the shepherd is company while you're in the valley, and not knowing that you're getting ready to come out of the valley. See, another instance scripturally when it comes to scriptures is this, that when you look at Abram and Sarai, do you know what Sarah had to deal with? From her husband lying, from her husband leaving her into the hands of somebody else. But you know that God had to be so significant. There was something about Sarah's life to where God would tell and reveal to Abraham, at this time next year, at the time of life, I'm coming, and that woman is going to have a child. At that time. I'm going to tell you something. Sarah was so important to heaven that God would shut down an entire country and stop them from producing children because of one woman. Why? Because that woman was the interceder of the family. And she didn't get disgruntled. She wasn't upset when Abraham left her twice. Left her twice, and God shut down an entire city because of one woman. Do you know how significant you are in that relationship? That somebody could have left you twice, somebody could have mistreated you twice, and God is still saying that you're the significance behind the relationship, because Abraham couldn't produce without the woman.
Absolutely not.
And listen, I want you to hear this. And I know some male egos are going to be bruised. Egotistical means are going to be bruised tonight, because God only placed some women in your life so that your life can produce, so that your life can increase, so that your life can go forward. And see, you're thinking that's you. It's not you, it's them behind the scenes praying for you. Them behind the scenes crying out for you. Them behind the scenes waging war for you. And you, for some reason, you thinking it's you. Look back over your life and you see where your life was then. Now look at where your life is now. So you'll know it wasn't you that did it by your own intuition, by your own strength, by your education, by your certificates, by your pedigree. It wasn't you by your work history. It was somebody behind the scenes that was opening the doors, that were praying, that were opening the gates, and that was dealing with every power that came against you and your bloodline. They were winning the battle with the curse that came down to the third and fourth generation. And you must understand that you have to have somebody to where you're recognized in the gates. How did Moses become Moses? Well, how did he become a shepherd? How did Moses become a shepherd? Moses didn't deal with no sheep. He was the prince of Egypt. So who got Moses intervene a shepherd. Zipporah. Do you know the spirits that Zipporah had to deal with in order to get Moses? Because Moses dealt with sorcery, astrology, witchcraft. He dealt with all that stuff, and that stuff follows people when they come into relation. The door don't close because you left.
Right.
And Zipporah had to be strong enough to deal with the gods of Egypt so that Moses could be transformed and converted into a person that God would call him, that Moses, you shall be a god to Pharaoh. But Zipporah had to deal with the gods of Egypt in order for Moses to transform into the God of gods. You shall be a god. So she had to deal with every entity that he opened the door to that knew him. Every sorcerer, all of that stuff that they did in the magic. So God would tell Moses to throw your stick down because Jambres and Jumbres, they knew how to do the exact same thing. They practiced that sorcery. So God would tell them to go back, but it was only after Zipporah. He would meet Zipporah and Jethro, who was a priest of the Medians, that Jethro would come and tell Moses exactly that you can't teach everybody. You can't talk to everybody. You can't handle every problem. You can't do it by yourself. You're going to have to set up leaders. But it was only because Zipporah. Hear what I'm saying tonight? That some of you are looking for the answers that you are. You're asking God for answers, and God say, I place you in the relationship as the answer. Intercede. Wage war, fight. We all talk about the Proverbs 31 woman. And especially, I want me a Proverbs 31 woman. I got to have it. Yeah, you know what the Bible said, happy wife, happy life. Yeah, I understand that the happy wife, happy life. But what if your wife is just happy interceding? Do you know what makes your wife happy? You know, the Bible said, no, it ain't the Bible, it's a saying. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, and your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it. The nursery rhymes. But can you wage war for your spouse where the enemy is waging war for them and they can't clap their hands? Clapping their hands is a sign of agreement. Clapping their hand like applause. Celebrating. If they can't celebrate, then why? What's waging war against them? What's waging war with? And this is the stuff that we don't talk about in marriage counseling. We don't talk about, well, you got to obey your husband, and you have to submit, wife. Y'all got to submit, and husband, you have to love your wife like Christ loved the church. So this is marriage counseling 101. You got to understand it. Y'all got to be together. Y'all got to communicate. Somebody got to cook around the house. Somebody got to ready to kick. And we talk about this, and that's so antiquated. And even though at times it need to be addressed because these are foundational issues. That's why the Bible said the foundation is destroyed. What can the righteous do? You can be righteous. And in that relationship, but if that foundation is destroyed, what repairs the foundation is prayer. It's prayer. And we must learn to pray. The Proverbs 31 woman, one thing that it states, even though she got up early, her servants was with her, she made clothes for her husband. But the thing that stood out to me was more than anything. Her husband was known in the gates. Not by him. It said by her. He was known in the gates based on her. See, there are natural gates that you're known in, but there are spiritual gates. See, there are some people that pray to the extent in warfare that if the enemy even would try, if he would see you standing in the gap, that he wouldn't go near your family. He wouldn't go near your children. He wouldn't try to attack your finances. He wouldn't try to attack your mind. He wouldn't try to attack your job because he know that there's somebody that stands in the gate of that marriage. Don't you dare go near it. As Satan would tell God, you cannot touch Job because there's a hedge around him. his cattle, his children? Could it be that you are the gatekeeper that God is talking about? Could it be that you're the one that has the hedge? You are the hedge of protection? You need to be the intercessor that some people may never see the real you. They'll only see the unedited version of you because God is trusting them with the present to see if he can show them the full manifestation of the future. Mm-hmm. And if they leave in the transition, then they can't get the benefits of the transformation. Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to be when it comes to relationships and marriages. There's some things that will never change without prayer. Never. This is why the Bible said in 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing. Mm-hmm. You must pray. You must bombard heaven. The Bible said that the eyes of the Lord are in every place. Watch, seeking those that are doing good and evil. Mm-hmm. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, and his ears is open to their prayers. So if his eyes are in every place and his ears is open to their prayer, who's praying and what God is seeing? That whatever you do in secret, he's going to reward you open. Why? Because you are an intercessor. Mm-hmm. You're interceding. You are waging war. Mm-hmm. You are engaging in battle. This is the flip side of marriage warfare. You're waging battle. If you see something wrong, stop complaining about it. Stop fussing about it. Wage war. Wage war whatever you see that need to be changed. Stop waging war with the person. There are spirits that are associated with it. You don't wrestle against flesh and blood. You're wrestling against principalities and powers and rulers of darkness. Let me tell you this, please, and I'm going to say this with Jacob. In Genesis chapter 32, Jacob is wrestling with a man that is an angel. The angel of the Lord, the Bible says. He's wrestling, and his name changes based on his wrestle. He said, you have prevailed against God. This is in a wrestle. It's prevailing. So something had to take place in wrestling. So when God is trying to take that, he prevailed, and he called his name, you shall be known from here on as a prince. This is what you shall be known as. So what happens if Jacob had to wrestle with an angel? What are you wrestling with in your marriage as an intercessor? If you're wrestling not against flesh and blood, but there are principalities and powers and rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places. So what are you wrestling against? It's not flesh and blood. There's a battle that's transpiring and taking place, and you must win that battle as the intercessor. Mm-hmm. Because when you win the battle of a principality or a power, it ends it. Mm-hmm. Watch this. When Esau wanted to kill Jacob, he could not kill Jacob because Jacob no longer existed. The transformation came. Israel was now there. He had already prevailed against angels, so man was no problem for him.
Absolutely.
What am I trying to tell you? That it's time for you to wage war and intercede for your spouse. Well, what if I don't have a spouse? I know there's some people who are saying, if I don't have a spouse, what do I do? Watch this. It's so easy. Because God is the God who knows all. He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He's everywhere at every time. So God knows the past, the present, and the future. I am he that which is, which was, and which is to come. So he's in any area of your life where you desire to be futuristically, he's there. I mean, there is no space or time that God has not been in your life. So if you're saying, I don't have a spouse, but you can ask God, that the spouse that you are sending, what areas do I need to wage war? What areas do I need for? And see, people never ask God the question. They only ask God for, what is my husband going to look like?
Right.
What is my wife going to
be
look like?
fine?
Is she fine? Is she's got to have a future? She's got to have a portfolio, and she's got to already be together. Well, if she's already together, what's the need of her being you? We don't understand that God will give you people that's finished in heaven that he's perfecting on earth. Mm-hmm. So you're in the stage of people being perfected. And sometimes in their perfection, it may cause you pain, but you cannot stop interceding because of your pain. Mm-hmm. If you do not have a spouse, start interceding and waging war. You have to be the watchman that stands at the gate of your greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you realize it or not, God had purposed marriage for a reason in the earth, not just to produce children, but to take dominion and authority, and to where the heavens will always be open. If your heavens are closed, why? And this is so significant, because if you don't know how to wage war, the Bible said if your wife is upset, then your prayers are hindered.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how powerful that is?
Mm-hmm.
That because you didn't know how to deal with powers that came against her being upset, that now all of your prayers shall be hindered.
Mm.
These are not things that's expressed in marriage counseling, because we get in marriage counseling and all we think about is, I'm getting ready to satisfy this itch I have. I've been having this burning desire, and I know, and we find scriptures that validate where we are in seasons. The Bible said it's better to marry than to burn. I'm burning. I'm burning in lust. I'm burning in heat. So we try to use scriptures to validate us getting married, and we that haven't become the intercessors to wage war, will get bloodline battles and doors that we've opened. You have to be mature in this season.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be mature. You have to be mature. And here's the thing. Some people will walk away because of the unedited version.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were Jacob, God couldn't trust you with Israel. He trusted you with it, but you walked away.
Mm-hmm.
So when Israel come, God is still protecting Israel right now. And God is giving, and I said this, because some people say, well, God told me my wife was a Proverbs 31 woman. I said, okay. And some people quit before she becomes chapter 31. They're in chapter 30, and they leave the person in chapter 30 not knowing that God was getting ready to turn the page.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was getting ready to change the chapter, and you became frustrated, and you walked away before you seen the full manifestation. And you quit. Why? Because we start praying on the person and not praying for the person. We start speaking word curses over that individual's life, not understanding the power of intercession. And tonight, we just wanted to talk about, you want to have
I don't have anything else to say.
And this is what God is trying to do when it comes to this, because, again, marriage is almost extinct. Real marriage is almost extinct because warfare has been waged against marriage from the beginning, but it's really in this time. So people are really getting divorced right now. They are. And they're saying, I'll never get married again. And this is what the enemy's objective is for divorce, for people never get married.
Or they won't get married at all because their parents went through something real bad in their marriage and their divorce. So they saw the pattern of divorce, and it could be the grandparents and then now the parents. So there's like, I'm never getting married because I don't want to go through divorce, so I'm going to burn. I'm going to have my girlfriend, I'm going to have my boyfriend, whatever, and we're going to live together besides. Yeah, we're going to shack and live together, procreate together, however, we not married. And that's crazy. You living as married. You have family, children, you're sharing your finances. You're doing the things of married people, but won't make the true connection because they're afraid of what happened to the mother and the father, the grandmother and the grandfather. So, yeah.
It's crazy that we don't want a covenant with God. We want covers, but not covenants.
Absolutely.
So we don't make the commitment because of the covenant. So listen, we thank you guys for tuning in with us tonight on
Covenant Keepers.
On Covenant Keepers on the Vision Channel and Spirit Radio. But are you prepared to be your spouse intercessor? Listen, we'll see you next Wednesday on Covenant Keepers on Spirit Radio. We thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Good night.